It's just a small, quiet town. Nothing like this has happened around here.
In the middle of quiet, small-town Arkansas, something horrifying was hiding just beneath the surface. Literally. A 5-year-old boy named Blue Rolland didn't just lose his life, he was stolen from it, in a way no child should ever endure. And the person responsible? Not a stranger, not a monster in the dark, but the man his mother invited into their home, Nathan Bridges. This wasn't some snap decision or moment of rage. What happened to Blue was brutal, calculated, and deeply disturbing. The boy was drowned, yes, drowned in a toilet. Then, as if that weren't gruesome enough, his tiny body was stuffed under the floorboards like he was some kind of dirty secret. But secrets have a way of leaking out, especially when they start to smell. This isn't just a story of murder, it's a disturbing look into how everyone failed him. The system, the people closest to him, even his own mother. Blue should have been playing with toys, not fighting for his life. He should have been safe, not silenced. So how did it get this far? Why didn't anyone step in sooner? The truth didn't come out in whispers. It came crashing down like a wrecking ball. When law enforcement finally showed up, they weren't prepared for the scene that awaited them. The smell alone was a warning sign, one that couldn't be ignored. Underneath the floorboards, officers found not just a body, but evidence of prolonged abuse, torture, in a home steeped in silence and terror. A 5-year-old murdered and hidden beneath the very floor he once walked on. As investigators peeled back the layers of this nightmare, they exposed more than just a crime. They exposed a chilling collapse of humanity. The people who should have stood between Blue and danger either turned a blind eye or weren't paying attention at all, and that ignorance cost him everything. But Blue's story is more than a singular tragedy. It's a reflection of something much bigger and much darker. But before we begin, I want to thank you, my amazing viewers and subscribers, your support through your likes, shares, and comments. Your engagements help make these stories more meaningful. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. You see, Arkansas doesn't just have a child abuse problem, it has a full-blown crisis. In 2021, the state reported 76 confirmed cases of child abuse per 1,000 children. That's nearly 10 times the national average. These aren't just numbers. They're kids like Blue, slipping through the cracks of a system that's supposed to protect them. And the cracks are getting wider. In 2022 alone, the state received over 57,000 child abuse referrals. Nearly 32,000 were investigated. And guess what? More than 8,900 children were confirmed victims of abuse or neglect. Infants under the age of 1, the most at risk. Nearly 2,000 babies were hurt before they could even walk. The root causes? Poverty, drug abuse, burned out welfare systems. Around 41% of Arkansas households struggle to keep the lights on, let alone raise a child. That kind of pressure turns parenting into survival, and sometimes survival into neglect. Blue Rolland's death is a horror story, no doubt, but it's also a siren blaring across the state, warning us of a broken system, of parents who can't or won't protect their own, and of children who have no voice, no chance, and no help.
Let's talk about the boy at the heart of this tragedy, Blue Rolland. He was just 5, a soft-spoken, wide-eyed little soul who lit up rooms without even trying. The kind of kid who'd quietly sit cross-legged on the floor, fully immersed in his own innocent world, stacking blocks or flipping through picture books like they were ancient scrolls. People who knew him didn't just like him, they loved him. They described him as sweet, gentle, and full of quiet affection. Not the loud bouncing off the walls type, he was peaceful. A kid who didn't demand much, just safety, love, and a little space to be a child. But what Blue deserved, he never got. His mother, Ashley Rolland, wasn't a villain out of the gate. She was a struggling mom trying to keep it together, raising Blue and his older sister Taylor while juggling the emotional mess that was her personal life. Unfortunately, Ashley had a talent for choosing the wrong kind of love. Now, Nathan wasn't some mystery man off the grid. He had a past, and not the used to party in college kind. We're talking violent, controlling, short fuse type of past, the kind of guy whose charm barely lasted through the first cup of coffee. When Ashley met him, maybe she thought he was a fresh start, someone who'd finally treat her right and help raise her kids. He didn't. Nathan's charm wore off faster than dollar store cologne. Once the mask slipped, the monster underneath showed his face. His temper? Unpredictable, explosive. It didn't take much to light his fuse. One wrong look, a bad day, a crying child. And that rage didn't just hit Ashley, it reached her children too. What started as a bad relationship became a full-blown horror show, one Ashley couldn't or wouldn't walk away from. And while she struggled to hold on to her version of normal, Blue was trapped in a house that looked like a home but felt more like a cage. And here's where the true tragedy begins. Blue's world didn't fall apart overnight. It crumbled slowly, piece by piece, while the people meant to protect him stood by, watching it happen.
There was always something off about Nathan Bridges. Not just your average hothead. This was a man who didn't just lose control, he thrived on it. There was something disturbingly calculated in the way he dominated the people around him, like he enjoyed watching others squirm under his thumb, especially the smallest, quietest one in the house, Blue Rolland. Blue, with his soft heart and gentle soul, never stood a chance. It didn't take much to set Nathan off. Spilled juice, a wrong look, or sometimes nothing at all. Blue, being the easy target he was, quickly became Nathan's punching bag. Not always literal, but abuse doesn't need fists to leave bruises. And Ashley, Blue's mother, she was there. She saw it, felt it, but did nothing. Not because she didn't love her kids, at least not at first, but because somewhere along the way, her love got buried beneath fear, dependency, and bad decisions stacked like dominoes. Her connection to Nathan wasn't love. It was survival, twisted, toxic, and deadly. Their home, if you could even call it that, wasn't a place of warmth. It was a pressure cooker. Tension in the air so thick you could feel it in your teeth. The line between right and wrong didn't just blur, it disappeared. And in that chaos, abuse became routine. Blue and his sister Taylor lived in a constant state of fear, walking on eggshells so sharp they bled. Day after day, the emotional weight got heavier, while the outside world stayed oblivious. The signs were there, clear, loud, screaming for attention, but no one came. And the worst part, Blue still loved his mother, that innocent, unconditional love kids are born with. Yeah, he held on to that, even when it hurt, even when it made no sense. But love can't stop fists, love can't stop drowning. September 9th, 2022. To the outside world, just another day. But inside the walls of that house, something evil was about to unfold. It started small. Nathan, being the adult-sized toddler he was, put his finger in Blue's mouth. Blue bit down, a reaction, a reflex, a child's instinct. But to Nathan, that was an act of war. His temper detonated. And what came next wasn't discipline. It wasn't a lesson. It was torture. Nathan dragged 5-year-old Blue into the bathroom, the one place a child should feel safe. Instead, it became the scene of his last moments. Nathan began plunging Blue's head into the toilet over and over again, dunking, holding, submerging, laughing maybe. Who knows? Blue thrashed, struggled, fought to breathe, but he was just a kid, a tiny kid, no match for a full-grown man bent on cruelty. And what did Ashley do? Nothing. She was home. She heard it. Blue's screams, his desperate gasps, his cries that could have shattered the heart of any mother, except hers. Whether it was fear or pure detachment, she didn't run to him. She didn't stop it. She let it happen. And in that moment, Blue was completely alone, trapped, drowning, in the very house that should have kept him safe. This wasn't just a murder. It was the final act in a long, slow collapse. A child betrayed by the two people who were supposed to love him most. One by abuse, the other by silence. And if you think it can't get worse, oh, just wait.
It's hard to know what raced through Ashley Rowland's mind in those final moments, if anything did at all. She had lived with Nathan Bridges long enough to know exactly what kind of monster he was. The violence wasn't new. It didn't sneak up on her. Nathan didn't just abuse Blue. He had turned Ashley into a punching bag, too. Physically, mentally, slowly, and still, she stayed. Was it fear, dependence, denial? Maybe all three tangled into one toxic knot she couldn't untie. Maybe she thought keeping the peace meant keeping her family. Or maybe, just maybe, she had become so desensitized to chaos, she couldn't tell the difference between danger and normal anymore. Ashley claimed to love her children, and maybe she did, but love alone doesn't save lives. Action does. And in the moment her son needed her most, she chose paralysis over protection. She didn't run to stop Nathan. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just let it happen. A mother standing in the same house, where her child was literally being drowned in a toilet, did nothing. That silence. It wasn't just a moment, it was a choice. Now here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask. Was Ashley a victim, or was she complicit? The answer isn't clean. Trauma rarely is. Ashley lived under constant psychological warfare, but so did Blue, and unlike her, he didn't get a choice. He relied on her to be the shield between him and the monster she brought home, and when the time came to be that shield, she folded. When Blue died, it wasn't just the tragic loss of an innocent life. It was the final nail in a family already cracked beyond repair. Ashley's failure didn't start on that day. It started the first time she saw Nathan lash out and look the other way. It escalated every time she stayed quiet. By the time Blue took his final breath, she was no longer just a bystander. She had become part of the story. Ashley didn't hold her son under that water, but her silence helped drown him. That's the brutal truth. And while she may have felt trapped, helpless, or broken, her inaction helped Nathan finish what years of abuse had started. You can call her a victim, you can call her broken, but in the end, her silence screamed louder than anything else in that house. And that silence, it cost Blue everything.
Ashley Rolland wasn't just in a toxic relationship, she was neck deep in it, trapped under Nathan Bridges' control like a fly in a spider's web. Fear, manipulation, emotional chains. Nathan wrapped them all around her. But no matter how twisted her reality had become, one truth cuts through the noise. She had a chance to stop the horror, and she didn't. That failure, it'll follow her forever, and it'll haunt every person who ever loved Little Blue. When law enforcement finally got the call, they weren't expecting a crime scene straight out of a nightmare. It was December 2022, months after Blue had been killed and hidden like a dirty secret. The tip-off came from Karen Rolland, Blue's grandmother. She'd received a gut-wrenching phone call from Ashley. No small talk, no build-up, just the chilling news. Blue is dead. Karen did what Ashley couldn't. She called for help. And when deputies arrived, they had no idea what kind of evil they were walking into. The home itself felt off, too quiet, too cold. Officers made their way inside and quickly spotted something strange. Floorboards that didn't sit quite right. They pried them up. What waited underneath was the stuff of horror films. Disturbed earth, freshly compacted, a shallow grave in the one place a child should be safest, home. As they dug, the unmistakable stench of death punched through the air. It was thick, rotten, the kind of smell that brands itself into your memory. And buried beneath that dirt was Blue. His small, lifeless body had been stuffed beneath the floor, left to decay for nearly 3 months. But this wasn't just a careless discard. It was deliberate, hidden, like someone wanted to erase him completely. But even in death, Blue told his story. Beside his body were 2 haunting details, a pair of tiny flip-flops and a red and blue blanket. Not forensic evidence, not murder weapons, just a child's belongings, innocent and heartbreaking. That blanket should have been wrapped around him at bedtime. Instead, it became a marker of the betrayal he faced, and now investigators needed answers. Fast. They turned to Ashley, the last person to see Blue alive, and the one who buried him. Her story was both chilling and devastatingly casual. She claimed Nathan snapped after Blue bit his finger, and instead of disciplining him like A sane adult. Nathan dragged Blue to the bathroom. What followed was torture, disguised as punishment. Nathan repeatedly dunked Blue's head into the toilet, holding him down like he was trying to scrub away his own rage. Again, and again, and again, until the struggling stopped. Ashley said she heard the screams. She knew what was happening, and she did. Absolutely nothing. No attempt to intervene, no 911 call, not even a yell. Just silence. And that silence, it speaks louder than any confession. As detectives unraveled the timeline, it became clear this wasn't a one-time explosion. This was the final act in a long, brutal saga of abuse. Blue hadn't just slipped through the cracks. He had been living at the bottom of one. And he wasn't the only victim. Blue's older sister, Taylor, had been suffering in the same house of horrors. The abuse she endured made investigators' blood run cold. Burn marks, blisters on her feet from being forced to walk on hot surfaces. Her hair, shaved off. Her body, malnourished, starved, barely able to walk. She looked like a child pulled straight from a nightmare, a living witness to the cruelty that ended her brother's life. This wasn't just a failed family, it was a ticking time bomb no one stopped. And by the time police showed up, it had already exploded.
Taylor couldn't even walk. By the time help arrived, the little girl was so weak she had to be carried to the bathroom. Her body, starved, battered, and breaking down. When doctors examined her at the hospital, the evidence spoke for itself. She hadn't just been neglected, she'd been systematically destroyed, inside and out. But nothing could prepare investigators for what came next. Taylor wasn't just a victim of physical abuse, she was a witness. She saw it happen, every horrifying second of her little brother Blue's final moments. And that trauma, that's the kind of thing that doesn't fade with time. It burns itself into your memory like a brand. Blue didn't die in secret. He died with his sister nearby, watching, powerless, and unheard. The bruises on Taylor's body were visible, but the damage inside, that ran so much deeper. It wasn't just the burns, the blisters, or the starvation. It was the guilt, the fear, the helplessness of seeing her brother suffer while no one stepped in, not even their mother. Taylor was left in the wreckage, abandoned emotionally by the one person who should have protected her. And now, she was expected to survive in a world that had already chewed her up and spit her out. Social workers and investigators started piecing together her story, and what they uncovered was a chilling account of day-to-day hell. Taylor didn't just describe what happened, she relived it. Every time they asked a question, more cracks appeared in the facade. Her trauma was raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. She'd been through so much, and she was only a child. Physically, she'd heal. The burns would fade. The malnourishment could be reversed. But the nightmares, the memory of Blue gasping for air as she stood frozen in fear, that doesn't go away with a prescription and a bedtime story. Taylor's testimony would go on to play a crucial role in the case. It helped shine a spotlight on the kind of evil that had been festering in that house for far too long. But it also came at a cost, because to tell the truth, she had to tear open wounds that were still bleeding. Her road to recovery would be brutal, long, uncertain, and it would never go back to normal. Not after that. What happened inside that house wasn't just a tragedy. It was the collapse of a family, the fallout from years of unchecked abuse. And in the middle of it all, 2 kids were left to carry the weight, one in a grave, the other trying to crawl out of the emotional rubble. Blue never got the chance to grow up, to run, to laugh, to be safe. His life was stolen. And Taylor, she saw it happen.
The legal aftermath of Blue Rolland's death wasn't just painful. It was a chaotic storm of heartbreak, unanswered questions, and courtroom compromises that left everyone reeling. Nathan Bridges, the monster behind the brutality, was hauled into custody and slapped with charges of first-degree murder, battery, and child abuse. And after dragging things through the legal system for months, he finally folded. On July 15, 2024, 34-year-old Nathan pleaded guilty. The court handed down a 60-year prison sentence. just long enough to make sure he'll rot behind bars, never laying a hand on another child. But then there was Ashley Rolland, Blue's mother. Her charges were just as severe: capital murder and abuse of a corpse. But instead of standing trial and facing a full reckoning, she cut a deal. On August 8, 2024, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of permitting abuse of a minor. Her sentence? 40 years. To some, that sounded like justice. But to others, it felt like a slap in the face with a courtroom gavel, especially to Karen Rolland, Blue's heartbroken grandmother. She had been holding on to hope that the legal system would deliver something close to closure. But when the plea deals were finalized, that hope shattered. Karen couldn't wrap her head around how the people responsible for Blue's death could just sidestep a full trial and walk away with what felt like a discount sentence. "I just don't get it," she said, her voice shaking. "My grandson's never coming back. And they get to live out their lives in prison like this is some kind of deal?" Her pain was raw, and her confusion was valid. Ashley hadn't just failed to stop the abuse, she'd let it happen, again and again. In Karen's eyes, that wasn't just neglect. It was betrayal. A mother is supposed to protect. But instead, Ashley became part of the nightmare. The court's outcome left Karen in emotional limbo. She was torn between 2 truths. Ashley was her daughter. But Ashley had also stood by and let her own son die. Was she too brainwashed by Nathan's abuse to see clearly? Or had she simply chosen fear over motherhood? Karen wrestled with the complexity of Ashley's role. Maybe Ashley was broken. Maybe years of control and emotional warfare had stripped her of the will to fight back. But even then, even in the darkest corners of that house, there were choices. And Ashley chose silence. That silence cost Blue his life. As Karen watched the sentencing hearings wrap up, her stomach sank. 60 years for Nathan, 40 for Ashley. The numbers were big, but they still felt small compared to the damage done. She knew no sentence would ever be enough, but this felt like a system that blinked. Justice, she realized, doesn't always feel like justice. The trial was over, but the story wasn't. Not for Karen, not for Taylor, and definitely not for Blue. Karen stepped out of that courtroom a different woman, not just a grieving grandmother, but a fighter, an advocate, someone determined to make sure her grandson's death meant something more than just another news headline. She vowed to keep Blue's memory alive, loudly, publicly, relentlessly. And as the world tried to move on, Karen made sure no one would forget what happened in that house. Blue Rolland never got the chance to grow up, but his story won't be buried. We speak his name so the world remembers. Until next time, take care of each other and never stay silent.